What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to From the Bench. I'm your host, Will Meadows, and today is our Tuesday edition of the show where usually, I say it's a lot to talk about. It's football, it's basketball, it's this, that, and the other. There's not a ton to talk about, but today's our first ever episode where we won't be talking about football. There's just not much transfer portal news as of now, and the college football national championship is a week or so away, so we'll have some more stuff. This will probably be the only episode where we don't have at least a little bit to talk about. But today's just basketball because there's a whole lot going on around the SEC in basketball and for the Tennessee Volunteers basketball team. But before we get into anything, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment on how you feel about Tennessee's recent win over Texas and how you feel about Tennessee going into this just gauntlet of an SEC schedule. Make sure you guys follow all of our socials. The handles are listed below, and let's just get right into it. So Tennessee went to Austin, Texas a couple days ago and got themselves a big SEC win, a bounce-back win, a win that they needed kind of desperately, I'd like to say, because you don't want to be the number one team in the country and lose two in a row, especially in 1 week, and especially with the first one being in the fashion that it was, a 30-point beat down by Florida. They ended up going to Texas, winning 74-70. It was a gritty win. They were down for a while in the second half, but they found a way to just the better team won that night, and they made plays down the stretch. Responded to big shots by them and Trey Johnson, and Darlin Stone-Dubar was huge down the stretch. Zakai Ziegler was huge. They were great. They were in all they played. If you just look at the box score, you may be thinking like, wow, it's not very good. You only beat an unranked team by 4, but it's an away game. It's the SEC. Like nothing is going to be easy on the road in the SEC. We just saw it with Auburn and South Carolina, which we'll talk about a little bit later, because now Auburn is the new number one team in the country. Tennessee dropped to 6 this week after getting thumped by Florida State. That's a little much, considering Florida is a top 10 team to some people, or it's a little much to some people. Obviously, Florida. Why do I keep saying Florida State? Florida is a top 10 team, but I kind of think you deserve to drop 5 spots when you get thumped by 30, whether it's on the road or not. So, in that game, Chaz Lanier had 10 points and was 3 of 11 from the field. Kind of struggled, in my opinion, and I'm sure most of you guys saw Rick Barnes' comments after the game on why he pulled Chaz Lanier in the beginning of the second half so early. And he responded with something like, he drew up a play for Chaz Lanier to shoot a 3, and he didn't shoot the 3, and he said that if he doesn't do what he's being paid to do, then he's not going to play, which is just funny because, that is the state of college sports in today's world, and Rick Barnes is just kind of embracing it, which is kind of funny to see him doing it at his old age, because we're seeing a lot of old coaches in basketball and football step down. Obviously it started with Nick Saban. There's been other guys in football. Jim Larrañaga, coach of Miami, just did it as we beat Miami earlier in the year. But, a lot of old guys are stepping down and not a fan of the NIL. It's kind of funny to see Rick Barnes just embracing it to the state of what NIL is today. But that's besides the point. So Zakai Ziegler had 16 points, 3 rebounds, and 8 assists again, and he was huge down the stretch. He really was. Jordan Gainey had 12 points. Darlin Stone-Dubar had 12 points and 6 rebounds, and we'll talk a little bit more about him. He was huge for us. That was his second half. And Felix Okapara, you guys know I've not been the biggest Felix Okapara fan in the last few weeks. Not few weeks, but since the season really started, I thought he was kind of a carbon copy of Adu, in the sense of they were soft against the better teams. Felix, I don't know if you've listened, if you were offended, but you've really turned my opinion around on you. So clap it up for Felix Okapara. He's been great. Nobody was good against Florida, but he was good against Arkansas. He's upped his game. For forever it's been he's only going to dunk it, and that's still what it is. But it was, if he was wide open, he would dunk it and a putback. Now he's really solidified himself in the middle of the floor pick and roll game. And Zakai, that's a big credit to Zakai Ziegler being able to find him, being the skilled point guard and floor general that he is. But Felix has really upped his game. He's been more physical. He had 9 rebounds against Texas, and when he got subbed back in the game later in the second half, he was huge. I mean, he had a possession where he blocked it out of bounds, and the clock reset to 14, and shot clock reset to 14, and they run another set. He blocks it right back out of bounds. I mean, he played great. He was a huge presence down low. He rebounded hard in the second half. He ended the game with like 4 blocks. I mean, he was incredible for us. So, Felix, one more time. We'll clap it up for you one more time. You are playing a lot better basketball, young man, and I love seeing it. It's like I say, man, when I'm talking about somebody and saying that they're not all that, in my opinion, or this, that, and the other, I hope I'm wrong, especially if it's about a Tennessee player. Like, when I say Felix Okpara hasn't impressed me that much, I hope he turns around and scores 30 and 10 and puts up Wilt Chamberlain numbers. I mean, I hope that that's the case. I love being proved wrong when it's a UT guy proving me wrong. So, credit to Felix Okpara. He's been big. And it just really shows how deep this team is. Like, Igor Milicic, in most people's opinion, would probably be our third best player right now. Didn't have his best game. Didn't play bad by any means, but a guy like Darlin Stone-Dubar just had the hot hand that night, and he played a lot of minutes, and Felix played great. So it just shows how deep they are. And Igor Milicic, great attitude about it. You understand. Sometimes it's not that you did anything wrong, but somebody's just got the hot hand, and that's how it was. Speaking of Igor Milicic, I actually just saw him not too long ago. They had a thing for if you don't know, I do hope to be part of a few bigger things when I get to campus. I'm not going to say too much about it, but I saw him at Thompson Bowling Arena tonight on campus. He was cool. That's the second time I've met him. The first time was when I rushed the field for Alabama, and Bryce Howard, if you're listening, we got to meet him, and he was just nicer to me than I was to him. I mean, he acted like it was a pleasure to meet me instead of me being excited to meet him. I was like, Igor. And he was like, what's up, brother? I mean, it was awesome. That's kind of besides the point, but just kind of shows the locker room and how good of guys these guys are in the Tennessee basketball program. But, like I just said, he doesn't throw a fit. It's not his night, not playing that much. Oh, well, because he understands that some other guys have the hot hand. Now, speaking of hot hand, Darlin Stone-Dubar hit the crowd with the shush at Texas. I mean, Texas was making tough shots all night. I talked about Trey Johnson on the last show, saying that we had to keep him under control, and I'm not going to lie, we didn't at all. Trey Johnson ended the game with like 26 points, and I mean, he was just making plays, man. Like, it's not that we were playing bad defense, it was just better offense. Just on the run shots, one dribble pull-ups. I mean, he looked unguardable. Everything that he was throwing up seemed like it was going in. For the Longhorns, he's an electrifying player. That guy's a one and done. He's a lottery pick next year or this year. I mean, he is just some guys just have it scoring the ball, and he is one of those guys. They had another guard, Pope, hit a bunch of tough shots. I mean, they have some. Texas could be one of those teams in the tourney if they can get there, because again, the SEC is a gauntlet, and I think they're 11-5 now, which they're not a bad team at all by any means. Texas could be one of those teams because there's so many teams in March Madness that if you get a few guards hot at the right time, you can make a run. Texas could be one of those teams. They've got tough shot makers. That's what scares me so much about Florida. Florida's 3 best players are all very skilled guards. Like, and what I mean by skilled guards, like, obviously Zakai Ziegler is a very skilled guard, and the difference between him and the other 3 guys on Florida, Zakai Ziegler, yes, he's going to score the ball, he's going to make plays, but in my opinion, y'all can think what you think, and let me know in the comments if you disagree, but I don't think Zakai Ziegler is much of a threat to go for 30. Like, Walter Clayton Jr., Will Riley plays for Illinois, Elijah Martin and company over there in Florida, I mean, they have a few guys that can go for 30 whenever they'd like. And in the tournament, if you can get clicking, watch out. That's kind of what happened with Alabama. They had a few guys last year. When you have a few guys that can get hot like that, or a guard or 2 that can just make tough shots, you've got the ability to go far in March. And I really do think Texas can be one of those teams. So, like I said, if you box score watch, you're thinking, why did Tennessee? My girlfriend asked me, why do we only win by 4? They're not ranked or anything. It's a good win. It's on the road. That's what I told her. It's a good win. It's on the road, and that's what it's going to be, a gritty win after gritty win in the SEC this year. It's going to be a tough ride. Like I keep saying, it's an absolute gauntlet. Speaking of the gauntlet, we're going to have a little around the SEC section, as we used to do for football, especially on the bye weeks we did it. But with SEC or college basketball, you play one game in the weekdays, and then you play on Saturday. Around the SEC this Saturday, Auburn escaped from South Carolina, who's the first or second worst team in the SEC. It's either them or LSU, in my opinion. They escaped from Auburn escaped from South Carolina, 66-63. And that just shows you, man, any given night, anywhere, especially if you're on the road, it's going to be tough sledding in the SEC. Missouri beat Vanderbilt 75-66. Florida beat Arkansas 71-63, and Calipari, man, you've got some fans over there in Fayetteville that aren't happy. They've got all the talent in the world, and I'm going to get a drink of this chocolate milk right here. Gus's, the best chicken in Knoxville. If you live in Knoxville, you need to go to Gus's world famous fried chicken. Not a sponsor. I just love the place. I actually had it tonight for dinner, so give me 1 second. Calipari, you've got some people mad over there in Fayetteville. And it's not this game. It's just the 3 that you've lost. You got killed by Tennessee. You've lost to Arkansas, or you've lost to Florida. Like, it's getting ugly. You start off 0-3 in conference play. What are we doing here, John? You've got some people with question marks raised and eyebrows raised, wondering if Calipari was really the correct hire after, your old coach walked to go to USC. So they lose again. They start off 0-3 in conference play. Ole Miss beats LSU, who, in my opinion, is the worst team in the SEC. Nonetheless, Ole Miss is a solid team. They're a top 25 team in the country. They're another team that has multiple guys that can be good. Georgia, I tell you what, those Bulldogs are good. We're going to see them Wednesday, which we'll talk about a little later. Georgia beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma was ranked top 25. I think they were 17th. I don't know if they're ranked anymore. I don't think they are. They shouldn't be. Oklahoma was undefeated going into conference play. They have now lost their first 3 games of conference play. But, it's another top 25 win for Georgia as they beat Kentucky earlier in the week. So, the Bulldogs are hot. They're a good basketball team. Shout out Blue Cane. If you're from Knoxville, you probably are familiar with that name. Played at Catholic and is playing for Georgia right now, one of their better players. They've got an incredible freshman in Asa. A great team over there in Athens, a sneaky good team. And they're ranked now. I think it's 16, I want to say. So we're going to have a top 25 matchup in the Food City Center at Thompson Bowling Arena on Wednesday. Alabama beat Texas A&M 94-88. It was at A&M. It was rocking. But I'll tell you this, man. A&M didn't have their best player. Wade Taylor IV didn't suit up. So the fact that they were able to keep it close with Alabama, not to applaud a loss here. A&M's still a top 10 team. They were the 10th ranked team in the country going into last week. And they lose a close one to Bama. Their best player doesn't play, one of the best guards in the country. And, you got to kind of start to raise the eyebrow, like I just said with Calipari. Alabama couldn't guard me, you, the person that's watching this video after you, and the person who watched it before, and then my dad downstairs. I mean, they can't guard a soul. It seems like every team they play scores 85, north of 85. I mean, they played North Dakota, not North Dakota State, the one that is traditionally good at football, North Dakota. And they had a dude with the last name Eaglestaff have 45 on him. And they gave up 92 to North Dakota. So, outscoring people only goes so far. Grant Nelson's a solid big. Mark Seegers is probably the best point guard. Him or Zakai or Walter Clayton are some of the best guards in the SEC. But dang, you got to sit down and get in a stance and play some defense here. Nate Oates, his motto is, I'm just going to score more than you, and they're going to shoot a lot of threes. But, sometimes that doesn't work. And, who am I to talk? They made it to the national championship last year? Or no, the Final Four last year. But come on, man. And then Kentucky beat Mississippi State, which was another top 15 matchup, 95-90. Josh Hubbard, the guard for Mississippi State, another incredible guard, has never found a bad shot in his life. I mean, goodness. Good Lord. if you watch that game, I mean, that sucker was shooting with the utmost confidence, and rightfully so. But, some nights when the first few don't go in, or a few in a row don't go in, you got to realize maybe I shouldn't shoot this shot. But that was not on Josh Hubbard's mind. He was just going to shoot it whether you liked it or not. But Kentucky, nonetheless gets another win. They're, 4-0 against the top 15 now, but they have 3 unranked losses. So what the heck sense does that make? Mark Pope's got a good team over there, but they need to work on their defense too, because when they beat Florida, what was it, 100-something to 96? I mean, got to play some defense over there in Lexington, but they are a good basketball team nonetheless. They did lose to Georgia earlier this week, though, so got to play some defense, in my opinion, if you want to make a deep run. And that's the thing with Tennessee. I can say this as we just lost by 30 last week, which I think you needed that game. And it's not pretty, and it's really ugly. But any game with Tennessee, because we know what we're getting on the defensive end with Tennessee, and Duke's this way this year, and Iowa State's solid, but Duke especially, no matter how bad your offense is, your defense is going to keep you in the game. And I know it sounds dumb saying that when you just lose by 30, but traditionally, when it's a normal night, if your shots aren't falling, your defense is going to keep you in the game. And for teams like Kentucky and Alabama, if your shots aren't falling, you're just going to lose because you can't guard anybody. So that's just my 2 cents on it. But Tennessee has got the Georgia Bulldogs this Wednesday at home at the Thompson Bowling, or the Food City Center at Thompson Bowling Arena. Good night. It's a tongue twister. It's a top 20 matchup, 25 matchup, we'll say, to keep it safe for accuracy for the accuracy side of things. But it's a big game. I think it's at 7 o'clock. It's going to be, it's kind of one you want to win. You're at home, and you need one more. I mean, a lot of teams around the country and fans around the country think we haven't beat enough good teams, and that's just because teams like Auburn have been running the gauntlet, played the daggum Avengers in game before conference play, and they came out with only 1 loss. We have 1 loss. We have 2 ranked wins because Illinois and Baylor are ranked now, but Auburn has like 10 of them, and Alabama has like 10 of them, and now I just said not really 10, and then Kentucky has 4 of them. So, who knows, but we need to get this win under our belt and kind of solidify ourselves back at the top. Not that we, one 30-point loss doesn't just drop us but, to get back in the serious talks, beating a team that just beat Kentucky, you'll get back up there in the Auburn, Alabama, Kentucky talks, which we still are. We're the 6th-ranked team in the country, Florida. But it's kind of, Texas was your bounce back win, but your bounce back to get back for the top is this Georgia win, and it's much needed. And it's at home. You just had two in a row on the road. You need this one in Knoxville. So, like I said, there's a lot going on in the SEC. This show is going to start slowly becoming more and more about basketball, and, it's basketball season, so it's going to be that way. I may lose a few viewers. I might gain a few due to that because I know football is what everybody likes to talk about. And we're still going to have football on the show with the portal and everything else. And we have some stuff coming in February. Not going to talk too much about it, but a few guys that we can interview. Tennessee, that are being recruited by Tennessee, this, that, and the other, committed to Tennessee. We're going to have some guys on here. And we're also going to have, during baseball season, we'll have a few guys, same thing, committed or being recruited by Tennessee. And we're going to have one soon for basketball. I'm not going to say names, but a guy who's being heavily recruited by the Vols is going to be on here to talk about what it's like being recruited by the Vols. So stay tuned for all that. We've got a lot of great stuff coming on the show. Recently on the Instagram story, I put out some stuff that you guys would like to see. I got great feedback on that. So we're going to have some more of that. Some of them were questions. Some of them were really just stuff that you wanted me to talk about. So I think here soon we're going to have an episode but a segment in an episode where we talk about what your guys' thoughts and concerns were. But I think that's going to be it for today. Thank you guys for watching, and go Vols.